Interviews are an open book test, y'all. An open book test. And if you've ever been made to feel like you were going to be seen as unprepared or unwhatever by having notes next to you, let me just end that right now. Because not only is it expected, because you're interviewing these folks just as much as they're interviewing you, it can be an incredible tool for you to be able to be empowered during the interview process and log down the things that you're noticing and seeing in real time, so you're not trying to recall it all in the drive home, especially if you get anxious. So I'm going to teach y'all the game, because you can't play the game if you don't know the rules. My name is Beverly Dines. I'm a Chief Operating Officer, having scaled operations for over a decade and in over 6 fields. And this is How to Play the Corporate Game, Part 24, taking notes in an interview process, starting with what you should be taking notes with. Now, if you have not already used or have heard of a Padfolio is highly recommended. I'm highly recommending it, not only because it's reusable. A lot of them are reusable, so all you have to do is swap out the papers on the inside. But it is a super useful tool for a lot of reasons. One, you can have pens that are already slotted in there if you get the bigger ones. For the smaller ones, you can put your business cards too. A lot of them have different like spaces for tabs where you can put your resumes, extra copies of your cover letter, other things in there too. Sometimes I would put hair ties and bobby pins in some of those little pockets, and it's so helpful because it's a polished looking notebook that also is multi-use. So you can grab it really quickly, know it looks nice and collected, and you don't even have to get a black one either. What's so great now is that there's so many that come in different sizes, shapes and colors and all of the things, that you can get one that truly reflects your personality and also feel very prepared. So I highly recommend getting a Padfolio instead of like a spiral notebook, just because it is multi-use, it's reusable, and it just has that polished look that is going to enable you to look and present the way that in which you want to, while still having the notes that you absolutely should have and bring with you to the interview. That you have your Padfolio, the next thing that I want you to do is write down those 3 interview questions. Remember in my previous video, I talk about having 3 dynamic interview questions, and go to that video so that you can culminate those questions that'll make you really stand out. However, make sure you write those down at the top so that you're not even having to overthink it and try to like make things up on the fly. Put those 3 questions at the top so that not only you won't forget them, but they'll be there so that when it comes time for them to say, do you have any questions for us? You are like, boom, pow, you've got the questions right there. You're ready to go. Underneath your questions, what you're going to put next are 3 major achievements that you feel truly demonstrate the transferability of your skill set as it relates to the needs of that organization. Now, remember in the previous videos that I've done, I've talked about the importance of research and actually how to research, like through LinkedIn and everything else. So go back and look at that. But after you've done that research, right, think about 3 major achievements that you feel really directly relate to what that organization's, whether it's the value set, whether it's the most recent initiatives, maybe it's recent partnerships, but think about those areas in your skill set where you really want to highlight and zero in on, because when those questions come up about why you're excited about the role, or how would you want to plug in, or things like that relating to the acceleration of you being in the role, you can just immediately turn and look to those because you've done the research, and now you're confident because you can speak to that research in a way that is showcasing that transferability. So having 3 major achievements that you want to speak to, and you don't have to write a whole paragraph to yourself, right? You know your achievements, but the shorthand so that you immediately get a kickstart. Not only will that showcase your excitement, your skill set, and also the preparedness for you to be able to communicate to them how transferable your skills really are, and 3 achievements that you are really excited about to share. And if you are excited, it's going to show in your interview process. So that takes a little bit of forethought. You shouldn't have to think it up on the fly, and it's okay if you have that near you so that you can really shine during that part. Now, underneath that section, so you have your questions, the 3 questions you want to ask at the end of the interview at the top, so you don't forget them, the 3 major achievements, those shorthands. Then what I want you to do is do some shorthand answers for the behavioral type of questions. Now, the behavioral questions, right, everyone's like, but they're going to ask you those, right? And think about in advance some areas that you would want to highlight, because again, if you're nervous, if you're flustered, maybe the train was late, maybe you haven't eaten all day, whatever the case, you're not going to be able to always think about your best possible, moments in your career, or even when they ask you constructive ones too. So for example, if they ask you, describe a time where you made a mistake at work, or describe a time where, something went wrong and you had to resolve it, you want to ensure that you are slam dunking that question. And you don't want to come across as like, which I've had happen, where it's like, oh, I really can't think of anything, which happens often. I don't know. Like, I think I work really hard, and when things come up, I try really hard to transition. No, they want a real answer. So take the time to think, okay, where have I made a mistake at work? And what did I do to resolve that? Okay, well, I remember this one time, like this client, okay, let me write that down. And okay, it was really, it was really on me to do and what did I do to resolve? Oh, you know what? I did create that new policy and collaboration with the sales team on blah, blah, blah. Let me write that down. So now you can give a real answer to these behavioral questions that feels strong. And again, you're not writing these down in big paragraphs in your notebook, but the shorthand by itself will be so helpful to kickstart your brain to remember, oh yes, this is what I did. Or if they ask you, how do you work on a team? What kind of role do you like to play on a team? Just some shorthands so that you can kickstart that memory and really dive in to those things that you already know, just giving you that extra leg. And when it's time for you to ask your questions to them, write down their answers. Everything. Write down their answers. Scribble the heck, because especially if you have multiple interviews or if you've got screens coming up or just in general, you've got a hectic life, hectic week, you're nervous, whatever the case. Again, our memories are unreliable. You want to write down quick notes about what they're saying, especially because ideally these are the people that you're going to be working with full time or are going to be, your supervisors or whatever the case. And you want to ensure that you are remembering key details that stood out to you in that moment and not, again, driving home or being on the train ride home like, dang it, what did they say about such and such? So take that time to write those notes down because you are interviewing them. And based off of what they say will give you potential questions for the next round or follow-ups to those questions that might supersede the original ones that you had prepared with. And that is where it gets really dynamic and you're collaborating in the interview process because you might go, oh wait, actually, this kick-started my memory. I remember and now you're in the mix, right? But that having that tool there and writing that down will help you afterwards as you do your assessment and during the process as well. Now, through every stage of the process, I want you to write down the names of every person that you've spoken to. Every single person. Write it down in your journal and then quickly put a dash next to it and what their title is. If you are nervous, if you're stressed, and leaders, if you're watching this, please do not assume that because somebody forgets your name or forgot to put your name or the right way in an email follow-up or whatever the case is, that don't give a crap about your company. People are struggling. They are trying to remember their names, let alone yours. Okay. But even still, because it's a game and because folks will feel away if they've been going through the interview process with you and you can't remember regardless of your context, write that down, write those names down so that you can call back to them. And in your thank you follow-ups, you are being direct. You can speak to, it was so great meeting with Cassidy on X, or so nice meeting with, Arthur on this, or a so nice meeting. It is going to make the difference when you are able to call back to those moments and be very specific with who those moments came from. Here's a hack that I have used multiple times, especially when I was really nervous during the earlier points of my career and pivoting to different fields entirely where I might have felt a little bit like fish out of water. Write down shorthand what the questions are that they're asking you. It gives you like 30 extra seconds for you to compose yourself so that you can provide yourself the time to really think about the question that is being asked of you and try to give the best answer possible. Don't write the whole dang question down, but take a second to just go,